Harold Godwinson, who became King Harold II, was the last of the Anglo-Saxon kings, and in 1066 he was killed and his army defeated by William, Duke of Normandy, at the Battle of Hastings. This Norman conquest brought huge changes to England, including in Dry Drayton. William set about restructuring the English government and imposing the feudal system on the nobility. There are 5 landowners listed for Drayton, as Dry Drayton was known, before the conquest, but all but one were replaced by King William's actions. We shall trace the major changes in ownership through the ages. When we investigate the earliest records, we find, perhaps surprisingly, that 2 powerful women, both with royal connections and who lived almost 1200 years ago, held land in our village. Firstly, let's look at the size of Dry Drayton at the time of the Domesday Inquiry of 1086. The inquiry was essentially a census, designed to assess the value of land. We find that the number of hides and vergates of the landowners is given. These ancient measurements represent the amount of land sufficient to support a household, or that a team of 2 oxen could plough in a single annual season. In fact, they were a measure of value and tax assessment. It is interesting that when translated into modern measurements, the total area is approximately 2,400 acres, which is the size of Dry Drayton until the 1960s, when Bar Hill was created and the area removed from our parish. So it seems that the parish boundaries of our village that existed in 1086 remained intact for another 900 years. The tradition of beating the bounds, which existed from Anglo-Saxon times, would have surely helped to preserve these boundaries.
Turning now to the actual landowners, we find the first of the 2 powerful women connected with Dry Drayton. Before the conquest, a woman called Edeva held 4 hides and 2 vergates, or 540 acres. Her lands in Dry Drayton formed only a small part of her total holdings. She is listed elsewhere as Edeva the Fair, and associated with 127 places in what is now Cambridgeshire and the adjoining counties. Edeva the Fair was also known as Edith Swanneck, and was one of the wealthiest magnates in England on the eve of the Norman conquest. She was the granddaughter of King Ethelred the Unready. In about 1042, she married Harold Godwinson in a handfast or common law marriage, which produced 6 children. However, when Harold became King Harold II in 1066, Edith, or Edeva, was considered to be only a mistress and not technically a queen. According to folklore, Edeva identified Harold's mutilated body after the Battle of Hastings by certain markings only known to her. Whether this powerful woman with high royal connections ever visited her land in Dry Drayton is unknown and unlikely. What is known is that she had lost all of her land holdings by the time of the Domesday Book. Most of her land in Dry Drayton was given by King William to Count Alan of Brittany, a kinsman and companion of William at the Battle of Hastings. Alan became one of the richest and most powerful men of England and took Gunhild, the daughter of Edeva the Fair and Harold II, as his partner. Queen Edith's Way and Edeva Court in Cambridge lie open land that our Edeva once held. As for the land in Dry Drayton that William gave to Count Alan, it was held for him by Swavesey Priory, and was to change ownership many times over the following centuries, including to a priory in Coventry in the 14th century. In the 16th century, it came to the Hutton family in Dry Drayton, who would hold it for many years.
Turning now to the second of the powerful women connected with Dry Drayton, we find a Countess Judith. She was the niece of William the Conqueror, and she married Earl Walthorf of Northumbria, who held about 450 acres in Dry Drayton. Walthorf was a Saxon earl who governed various places, including Huntingdonshire, and was associated with over 100 properties elsewhere. However, in 1075, Walthorf, in company with others, rebelled against King William and was executed the following year. About 100 acres of Earl Walthorf's land in Dry Drayton went to his widow, Countess Judith. Judith held land in 14 places before the conquest, but by the time of the Domesday Book, she was associated with almost 200 properties. Judith's properties were spread across 10 counties. One assumes that her uncle William had a significant bearing on her newfound wealth, and she had several manors within 30 miles of Dry Drayton, and may have lived at times in Kempston in Bedfordshire and sometimes at Sawtry near Huntingdon. One also wonders if this woman of some importance and with a close royal connection ever visited her land in Dry Drayton. The subsequent history of Countess Judith's land is not known, and sadly we have no clue which part of our parish had this royal connection.
After the conquest, the other landowners in the parish included Baron Hardwin de Skellers and Robert Faffington. However, the major landholder in Dry Drayton, both before and after the Norman conquest, was the Abbot of Crowland Abbey. It is uncertain when the abbot acquired the land, for the early records are lost, but Crowland or Croyland Abbey in Lincolnshire held nearly half of the parish before the conquest and remained a significant landowner for another 500 years.
Perhaps we should pause here for a moment and consider what was happening around this time elsewhere. Britain had a population of around 2 million and the world of about 300 million. Due to high infant mortality, life expectancy at birth was just 30 to 35 years of age. The renowned Chinese scientist Shen Kuo made the world's first reference to the magnetic compass. Europe's oldest university was established at Bologna, and in London, King William had started the building of the Tower of London. Far more locally, Hereward the Wake, an Anglo-Saxon nobleman who had been a tenant at Crowland Abbey and had a base at the Isle of Ely, led a rebellion against William the Conqueror. According to legend, Hereward roamed the fens, and one wonders how near he came to Dry Drayton.
Crowland Abbey retained an estate in Dry Drayton until the dissolution of the monasteries in the mid-16th century. The land was acquired by Thomas Hutton and added to the land he held that had once been Edeva's. The Hutton family now became the major landholder in the parish until the beginning of the 17th century. Over the next 250 years, however, this land, the major part of the village, and which centred on what became known as Drayton Park, changed hands many times. Owners included the Cutts family of Childerley, Humphrey Weld of Dorset, and John Howland of Surrey. Howland's daughter married the Duke of Bedford, and this main estate in the village stayed in the hands of the Dukes of Bedford for several generations. Eventually it was sold in 1795 to Dr. Samuel Smith, rector of Dry Drayton. The estate was then let out to tenant farmers, but in 1817 the manor house was pulled down. The land holdings were split up and sold following the death of the last of the Smith family rectors in 1841.
We have been discussing the powerful and royally connected landowners of our parish. But what of the peasants, the villeins, bordars and cottars? The Domesday Book states a total of 52 peasants who would have worked on the land for the 5 landowners. More specifically, in the records of the Abbot of Crowland's Dry Drayton estate, it is quoted, "There is land for 6 ploughs." There are here 11 villeins and 5 bordars with 3 ploughs. There might be a 4th. And here, 4 cottars and a meadow for 2 ploughs.
This is very much the era of feudal lords and serfs. There is no record of these peasants' names or history. But at least, unlike at 2 other Cambridgeshire manors that the Abbot owned, at Oakington and Cottenham, there were no slaves in Dry Drayton. The peasants of our village have a story, much of which cannot be uncovered, although, as the dates get later, more and more is known. Branches of the Gifford family are recorded in Dry Drayton from the late 14th century. For several hundred years, Giffords were regularly listed as customary tenants on Crowland Manor. By about 1600, the name was used by almost half the village's most substantial yeomen.
Once the Smith family's hold on the village was relinquished in 1841, prosperous yeoman farmers took over the reins. The title, Lord of the Manor, was passed on for some years, but without land, and this title was finally abolished by Act of Parliament in 1922. There still remained, however, a clear social divide in the village between masters and men, which only disappeared with the changes of farming practice after the Second World War.
And so ends our story.